Welcome to another edition of the Noles podcast. I'm your host, Gregory McCoy. This podcast is by a fan for fans. I am not a journalist. I am not a reporter. I am not an insider. I do not work for a website. The majority of my content comes from me and my opinion. Other information comes from the internet. Man, this program has come such a long way. You know, it's been a hell of a ride the last 6-7 years, man. And just to be in a place where we are back in the conversation for some of the top guys in the country, that in of itself is mind-blowing. To be, a fringe national championship contender is great to have those conversations again. But I think it's pretty much all for naught if we don't beat Clemson and win the ACC. And just beat all our rivals. I think a lot of the fans are putting the cart before the horse. They've added some tremendous weapons on offense. Bell, Coleman, offensive line guys. I don't have all the names right now, but it's going to be crazy. The LSU game is going to be crazy. Mike Norvell improved throughout the season as a play caller. He really let Jordan Travis, come into his own in terms of the offense. I like the emphasis on the running game. I think Benson can easily get 1,500 yards and, maybe 10 to 15 touchdowns. I think that's definitely within the cards. I think he's going to be the primary guy. I think he's going to go multiple at running back. Wide receivers. I'm not against the Coleman signing, but you've got so many good receivers on this team. I just don't see how you're going to keep them all. I think whoever are your projected starters, I think you could potentially have guys going into the portal. And I just hope it's not any of the young guys like Hakeem Williams. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the running back touches and the pass catches, how those are divvied up. I think, like any other coach, you're just going to go situation by situation and do what you need to do to win the game and just let the game dictate who gets the ball. But man, it just feels like 2013. It really does. I'm not comparing this team to the 2013 team, but it's just that feeling that we're on the cusp of something really good. But the game that I want more than anything is the Clemson game. I just think we have to get back to dominating them. Because they've created a winning tradition, not just a season here and season there. They've they're what Florida State used to be. And, we got to take that back. And, I've seen the recruiting boards. I've seen some of the guys that are projected to pick Florida State. You never know. Since the Travis Hunter situation, I never get my hopes up about any recruit or, transfer portal guy. I just wait for them to sign. I just think that, getting your hopes up and being let down, it's a roller coaster. So, I have to say this, and I've said it many times, I wasn't for the Mike Norvell hiring, but, I'm man enough to say that, hey, they got it right. And, however it's getting done, man, he's able to go out here and get guys, and they're, through NIL, and, they're making Florida State a factor. I think we take a tremendous jump this season, but I don't want to say playoff team. I want to say let's win the ACC, let's beat Clemson, and let's see what happens. But I really hope that Mike Norvell can get these guys to lock in for 12 games. Because when we went on that skid there, that 3-game skid, that was, if we just go 2-1 there, we're in the conversation. But man, it's just a great time for Florida State right now. And I just hope that the staff can keep moving this team forward. I think, Jordan Travis has made the quantum leap that I always was speaking about last season. I think he would probably never say this, but I think the Heisman, I think it's in his grasp. I mean, it just baffles the mind that, the first time we actually seen this guy play against Boston College in 2019, he's come from that guy to what he is today. And you got to give Willie Taggart credit on that. Willie Taggart saw his talent, seen something in him, and kudos to him. But it's great to see that Florida State finally wants to play big boy football. With the commitment to the football only facility, with the NIL. So, hopefully, things can keep trending. I don't expect us to go undefeated. I think they're going to be locked in for the LSU game. I think that's going to be a hard-fought game like it was last year. I think Florida State is going to come out on top. I just think that our offensive line and our defensive line, I think our lines are better than LSU's at this point. I really don't follow LSU like that, but, I mean, we dominated them last season, and we've added more talent. So I just think that, hey, man, I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be like a 24-21 game. And I know we're like 3 months away, basically 3 months and some change away from that game. But it's never too early to talk about Florida State football. So I just hope that, one, we can beat Clemson, win the ACC, and then we can see what happens. So as of right now, at the end of May, I'm pretty much predicting, I'm going to say 10-2, 11-1. 10-2 would be a definite step forward, I think. I don't see anybody blowing us out. And they've changed the schedule, so there's no more divisions. And the teams with the best 2 records, conference records, are going to play for the championship. I've heard some stuff about Florida State going to another conference. I've heard about the revenue thing and all of that. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't care about that stuff. I don't care who we play. The only games that I care about, that I want us to play, is Miami, Florida, and Clemson. As long as we keep those 3 teams on the schedule, I don't care about who else they play. I'm not a big fan of the ACC to begin with, but, those are the 3 games that are a must-have every year. We can't move to another conference and not play Florida or Miami and Clemson. We just can't. You can't do that. So the revenue thing, the business side of this, I don't really care about that. I want the program to spend money on football. I want them to make money off football just so we can have the games. I want them to be profitable so we can have the games and we can get all the things that we need to compete with other schools, the football only facility, the NIL, all that stuff. But, it genuinely comes down to fans. Fans spend their money. Fans make this thing go. And that's the nature of this thing. That's the nature of the business side of college football. So, I don't dive too deep into that stuff, but I know it's there. I know what it takes to have a great football program. You got to spend money. You got to spend to win. That's all it is. And football, college football has always been that way. It's just more in your face in this day and age. So, when you're talking about, I just think part of our struggles the last 6-7 years has been an unwillingness to do what needed to be done to get where we wanted to be. And I think, whoever's in charge now is willing to do what it takes for Florida State to get back to the top. And, it's been a heck of a ride to get back to this point. And I'm not saying we're back like 1993 or 99 or 2013, but it feels good to be respected again. It feels good to have a decent, average to good offensive line. It feels good to be on recruits, final college selection list. I wanted to touch on the Deion situation a little bit too, because I can appreciate how Mike Norvell has handled that situation. Deion is a legend at Florida State. I don't really think coming at Deion is the way to do it. I truly respect how he's just kept his head down and continued to recruit. I like the way that he handled the 5 players that transferred from Florida State to Colorado. He basically said in a roundabout way that it's great that those guys can get an opportunity to get on the field, and he hopes that they makes the best of it. Just class. I'm a Deion guy, so I'm not going to be negative about Deion, but you can tell that he's a little bit salty about not getting that job. And I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to go any further because, like I said, I'm a Florida State fan today because of Deion Sanders. I don't think the program would be where it is today without Deion Sanders. I think his time at Florida State brought in a lot of recruits. So, I think it's basically unavoidable that one day these teams are going to meet either in the regular season or the postseason. I just think that's inevitable. That game is going to, just draw tons of views on TV and wherever, streaming, whatever. I think it's unavoidable that we're on a collision course with Colorado. Deion's done a tremendous job with his roster. Kudos to him. And, I'm pulling for him. He's a former Florida State guy, and I'm pulling for him. But I'm still a diehard Florida State fan. So whenever we, and like I said, I think it's basically inevitable that we're going to run into Colorado at some point. Just hopefully we can destroy them. And that's probably the only time that I'll be rooting against Deion. And just, for me, I'm going to tread lightly with the national championship talk. Because, I just think having the players and having the will to do it is two different things. Like, I think this team, in some respects, at certain positions, might be a little bit better than the 2013 team. But the 2013 team was a better team because they came up together. It wasn't transfer portal pieces put together. You never know how a team is going to become a cohesive unit just by, putting a bunch of guys together. So, I think they're going to be good. But it's one guy can mess up the offense. One guy can mess up the defense. If all those guys are not following their responsibilities, it could very easily be a 6-6 season. So, it doesn't help that you start out with LSU, but it is what it is. So, on paper, we look like a national championship team, but as we know, games are not won on paper. Kudos to Mike Norvell for putting this team together. I think it's going to be very good. I think he's addressed every position except for safety. When you get into that cover 3 and Akeem Dent has to play the deep ball, last season he didn't show that he was a dependable free safety in terms of playing the deep ball. Oklahoma went downtown a couple of times, if I remember correctly. So that's the only, I think, corner you're solid. I think every loss that you've addressed. So, realistically, I'm going to say 10-2. I think you improve by one more game. To me, beating Clemson would be the equivalent of winning the national championship, just because they've had our number for the last 7-8 years. That's the biggest game to me. I would actually be happy with that. 10-2, a win over Clemson, and I would still say we moving in the right direction. I say large in part why the program is moving forward is just the coach. The school is behind the coach. The boosters are behind the coach. They're giving him what he needs. And when you have that, you're success, you have to be successful. I think if the starting wide receivers are Coleman and Wilson, I just think it's going to be crazy. Because if you double Wilson, you got another guy that's 6'4", that's acrobatic and can make plays. Okay, if you whatever. If you double Wilson and put your best corner on Coleman, then you got Bell running down the middle. Okay, then you got Benson, and then you got Jordan Travis that can take off and run. So I mean, it's the offense is going to be crazy. You know, the offense is really going to depend on Jordan Travis and the offense. Not really Jordan Travis, mostly the offensive line. If the offensive line can just come in and do what they did last season, I think, you know, you're going to be looking at one of the best offenses in Florida State history. I think the whole ranking system, as far as teams, coaches, players in the preseason, I mean, it's just to draw attention. It's hype. I really don't put a lot of stock in it. I feel like Florida State is going to be one of the best teams in the country, just on paper. We don't know how these things are going to play out once you get on the field. So I don't get too hype in the preseason. Like I said many times on this podcast, I evaluate what I see on the field. Because you can go get an all-world talent in high school, and when he gets to college, he could just be another guy. It's all about the product when it gets on the field. But on paper, I think we got at least 10 wins. Just looking at it on paper. Now, I don't really look at other teams other than Florida State, except, you know, our opponents, and that's the week of the game. I'll look at the other team and say, hey, they do this well, they do that well. We got to look out for this or that. But as far as studying other teams in the offseason, I really don't do that. So the opener is LSU. We know they've got a very good quarterback. We know LSU is always going to have athletic players. We know that their coach is a good coach. We know that he can recruit very well. We know that LSU has tons of money and resources to do things to make their program great. So that's what we have to contend with. I don't think Florida State is on that level. I think we've done a tremendous job of putting together a very good team, but we don't know how that's going to translate to on the field, because you're bringing a whole bunch of different personalities together for the first time, and we don't know how that's going to play out. All it takes is for one bad apple in the locker room to mess up a team. That's all it takes. I don't think Florida State has that problem, but you never know. I'm predicting at least 10 wins. Like I said earlier, I think we got at least 10 wins. I think Clemson and LSU present the most problems. I don't think Miami is there yet. I don't think Florida is there yet. But slowly but surely, Miami and Florida will get there. You can rest assured on that. You have to be a really bad recruiter. You have to be a really bad coach not to win at those programs. And so much talent has left South Florida for Georgia, Alabama, just those two schools alone. I mean, they've pretty much got a pipeline to South Florida. And the coach that they have is a great recruiter, but I don't know if he can cut off those pipelines, because they've been going for so long, at least 10 plus years now. If for Alabama, for Georgia, it's probably been the last 5 years since Kirby Smart got there. But if they can go in and get, if the Hurricanes can somehow put a block on that pipeline, I think you can see a resurgence of the Hurricanes. And I think for Florida State to be a national factor again, they have to get into South Florida like we used to. You know, we could go down to South Florida and get whoever we wanted at one point, like Georgia and Alabama's doing. But I really don't buy into the preseason hype. I got to see what's on the field. The last video, podcast, whatever you want to call it, I did. Some people send me emails, and one of the emails said, are you going to talk about Colorado or Florida State? Well, I'm going to talk about both. I mean, you've got the greatest player in Florida State history coaching that team. So I think it's just natural, if you're trying to cover all things Florida State football, and I don't cover every single little thing, but I think Deion is worth talking about. I'm going to talk about it. Deion's my favorite player. I started watching Florida State because of Deion. I said that from the very beginning. I'm not going to make any bones about that. I appreciate all the people who listen. I appreciate the amount of people that have subscribed to the YouTube channel, that subscribe to the podcast. This is a hobby. I'm not trying to become a YouTube star or podcast sensation, vice versa. It's just a hobby. It's an outlet. It's a way to just have something fun to do. I work a lot, and I think you got to have some kind of balance in life. So, what can I say, man? I recently watched a speech that Deion gave to his team, and I think he's destined to be a championship coach. I just see that. I don't think it's going to be this year because he has a very hard schedule. With that schedule that he has, and with a brand new team, pretty much, I'm thinking 6-6. I mean, just being realistic. I think he's naturally created a rivalry with Florida State. And, hopefully we can see him this year. I would love to see that game. I would love to see Colorado go, undefeated, 11-1, 10-2, and we get to play them. That would be must-see TV. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think 6-6. If they can go from 1 win to 6 wins, I think that would be a humongous jump. But it's kind of hard to get all those moving pieces. I mean, it would be the greatest turnaround in football, college football history, in my opinion. If this team doesn't meet your expectation, and when I say your, I mean fans, including me, I don't think, we should pile on these guys. I mean, you got to remember where we're coming from, how dormant the program has been for the last 6-7 years. So just to be able to get the caliber of player that we're getting now in the portal and recruiting, and you can't just instantly say, okay, national championship, ACC championship. You got to go out on the field and earn it and win it. And I think these guys are capable of being special. I see things on social media about Jordan Travis being on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks. I don't think he's there yet. I mean, he's had one really good season. Okay? I say have a really great season. I don't really measure the all-time greats by awards. I measure them by wins. Did they make the team better? That's how I measure those guys. So I think, this season is going to be very good to great. It could possibly end in an ACC championship or a playoff appearance. I mean, we're going to have to see. But the talent is there, the coaching is there, and I think the willingness to win is there. So Hopefully we'll be on the better side of, this season. With that being said, that concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It's available on YouTube. It's available on all podcast platforms. And as always, go Noles.